Hello, everybody. At this moment, I am going to speak about skill skill in English because that is a point and try to explain to you, for example, skill. Skill is when you are speaking about, for example, when you need to teach English in different groups, different levels of English, and you try to speak about different things. For example, vocabulary, grammar, expression in English, and something like that. And after you try to explain to them how to speak English, how to write in English, how to listen in English, because that is the point when you try to explain about how they can learn. Okay, for example, when you are speaking about this part, for example, speaking. Speaking is a good point, for example, when the students need to speak English, when the student need how to create a conversation. And the question is very simple when they try to ask a question. Okay, I need to, for example, in my case, if I were a student, uh, how can I ask a question? For example, someone else asked me in English what kind of answer, what kind of words could use in that moment because normally when you try to speak English with someone else, you don't know what kind of conversation you are going to have in that moment. Okay, the point is they try to practice English all the time and speaking and try to organize the sentence and try to pronounce because that is the point. When they are reading, they can speak faster. For example, the second skill or the second point is reading. Reading is a good point for students, for example, when they are starting English and the first level and they need to speak English, they need to create a conversation and they don't know how to organize the sentence. Reading is a good exercise when you need to speak faster, for example, and try to create a work every day in the morning or in the afternoon. Okay, and they try to read any document in English, but in a lot of voice. It's not mentally, no, it's in a lot of voice because the idea is when you are reading in a lot of voice, you can speak faster, you can pronounce much better, and they can advance with this language. Okay, for example, listening. Listening is another point, for example, in English, because I think that is the most difficult part in English. Why? Because listening is something hard for them at the beginning because they try to listen a conversation or for example when they are watching TV or listening to music and they try to listen the singer interviewer or something and but in that moment they don't know what kind of conversation they are doing. Uh, that's why it's much better when you try to practice listening different ways, different accent. British English, American English, Australian English, Canadian English, or another country different from those. And in that moment, when they are practicing how to listen to good music is when they try, for example, to take a copy on the lyrics and try to practice reading. And after they put, for example, they play the song and try to listen, and they realize what kind of conversation or what kind the lyrics is in that song. Okay, writing For example, writing in this part is much better when you try to organize the sentence, or when you need to say something and you don't know how to organize the structure in that part. Is very easy, it's not complicated, because when you are listening to music, when you are reading, you can organize a writing. When you are writing any document or a letter or something like that, when you need to send an email and you try to write in a good way, because it's in that point you can practice how to use a good vocabulary. Yes, that is the point. Now, in this moment, I want to go on with this topic. For example, in English, it's much better, or it's necessary when you try to use other things, for example, different tools in class. In this case, we are speaking about this part, technology in the classroom. The technology in the classroom is a good tool for the students nowadays. It's much better because they can learn how to speak English. They can learn how to write or read on different other things in this language, because in this moment they can practice on their cell phones, laptop, different devices, and they try to practice English in every moment. That is, for example, in my case, when I was studying English long time ago, around 8 or 10 years ago, when I was studying English, because in that moment I was using a dictionary. In that moment, when I used to need to look for any word I didn't know how to say in English, immediately I had to look for it in that dictionary, and after and try to organize the sentence. But nowadays it's very useful to have those technologies in class, because you can organize a good class, you can to teach in a good way, and try to give them a good methodologies where they can practice how to speak and write or listen this language. Now, for example, this other is a whole language. Whole language is, for example, when you try to give them vocabulary, expressions, and some new words, and they try to practice in class, at home, everywhere, or even more, they can practice with their classmates, because that is the point, and try to practice all the time. It's not necessary to practice only in class, because that is depends on the students when they need to learn this language in a good way, and try to practice at least 20 minutes per day. It's a good point. Now, for example, motivation. Motivation. Look at this. Motivation. That motivation in class is necessary. I think something is very important in class, because the students need to start any career in their future, and they realize that it's very important to speak English when they get a good job in the future. That's why it's much better when you try to tell them about it is good if you want learn English, and try to take advantage in this moment, and after, when you are studying English, you can learn easier. That is the point. In that way is, for example, when you are speaking, or when you are teaching different things in English, for example, about grammar, it's very hard at the beginning, when they are learning how to speak English, and when you are teaching, for example, different parts in English in grammar. For example, in this case, we are going to talk about auxiliary. Auxiliary in English. When you are speaking about auxiliary, You know, there are a lot of auxiliaries in English. For example, when you are teaching about present, that is a simple, present simple, and you are using, for example, do, das. In this case, when you are speaking in that way, when you need to ask a question, when you need to do, for example, a negative sentence or affirmative, no, not affirmative. It's only questions and negative question, and you are speaking in present simple. You need to use only do, das in present. Or, for example, when you are speaking in past, simple past, you need to use only this one, did. When you create a question, for example, in past, something you did in the past, and you need to ask a question, you need to use that auxiliary, did. For example, uh, did you go to the concert yesterday that night? It's a good question. Why? Because normally when you are teaching English and after you are speaking about, for example, present progressive. When you are speaking about, for example, present progressive, you are using this to be. To be is another thing, it's another auxiliary verb where you can't use do, does in present or did when you are speaking in past progressive. It's not good. In that way, you try to explain to them is very different when you are speaking in present simple or when you are speaking in present progressive. Normally, when you are using, for example, others auxiliaries, for example, could, might, uh, should, and so on, they are using different things. For example, when you need to use might and you try to create, for example, a question, a negative sentence, you are using might. Obviously, you need to use the same auxiliary, might. For example, uh, might you go to the moon? Is something is a good question because that is impossible to do, but it's when you are using, for example, might. Or I might go tomorrow to any place, I don't know, because that possibility is not good or is something isn't going to happen in that way. That's why it's necessary to use different tools when you are teaching English, and in that way and try to be clear all the time and try to practice and create good exercises where they can practice all the time and they learn good. They learn so many things on good, for example, um, grammar, expression, and vocabulary. Because in after, when they are in the universities or when they need to create a conversation in English, and they don't have any confusion when they are speaking English, because that is the point. That is all in this video because that is the point, and try to speak about how to speak or how to teach this language, because this language is not uh, difficult to learn. It's only and try to practice, because it's when you are speaking about, for example, all proverb where it says I forgot it. Okay, is practice makes perfect. When you try to practice something, you can learn so much about it. That is the point, okay? Bye. God bless you.